Ukrainian assault units have advanced in certain areas of the Donetsk region. We are talking about the Pokrovsk area, reports the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Over the past day, the Ukrainian military has cleared an area of more than 3 square kilometers, destroying the enemy's resources and reconnaissance groups. As part of the Dobropilya operation, since the beginning of its active phase, the Armed Forces of Ukraine have liberated more than 180 square kilometers, and more than 220 have been cleared of saboteurs. Despite the attempts of Russian troops to counterattack, Ukrainian defenders continue to hold the initiative in a number of areas.
Despite the unsuccessful attempts of the Russians to advance in some directions, over the past day our soldiers have searched for and destroyed the enemy on the territory of 3.4 square kilometers of the Pokrovsk district of the Donetsk region. Assault units in certain directions advanced up to 1.6 kilometers. Thanks to all Ukrainian defenders who are destroying the enemy. I especially want to note the defenders from the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment and the 253rd Battalion. Alexander Sursky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Facebook.
In the Donetsk region, the Russian army made another attempt at a mechanized assault. This time, in the Kostyantynivka direction, the enemy, as the day before near Dobropilya, threw heavy armored vehicles and tanks into battle. However, thanks to the coordinated work of the pilots of the Phoenix Border Unit and related units, the assault was not only stopped, but also destroyed 17 units of Russian equipment, including armored personnel carriers and tanks. Also, about 50 Russian occupiers were killed or wounded. And in the Kostyantynivka direction, Russian invaders stormed the positions of the defense forces in the direction of Kostyantynivka and near Shcherbanivka, Plashchivka, Ruzhin Yar, and Poltavka. In the Pokrovsk direction, the enemy carried out attacks in the areas of Volodymyrivka, Novohoshikova, Nikanarivka, Krasny Lyman, Mykolivka, Novoekonomik, Pokrovsk, Zverev, Kotline, Udakny. In the Oleksandrivsk direction, the Russian army tried to advance near Sikniv, Sosnivka, Novomykolivka, and Poltavka.
The enemy is in a hurry, quite possibly counting on the next 2 weeks, while the ground is still more or less stable and, accordingly, our dirt roads have not turned into a solid swamp as a result of the autumn rains. It is quite likely, but nevertheless, the fact remains that the enemy still has the resources to conduct large-scale offensive actions on different sectors of the front. In turn, the Ukrainian army demonstrates resilience. I think this resilience is due not only to the courage and heroism of our soldiers, but also to the very same engineering fortifications that were once built on the most threatening sectors of the front.
And the alter ego unit of the 93rd Kholodnaya Yar Brigade showed how it uses unmanned ground vehicles to counter Russian occupiers dug in along the tree lines near Kostyantynivka. The ground drones, equipped with machine guns, open fire at close range, which allows them to effectively engage targets without putting AFU infantrymen at risk. In the Russian army, understanding the real threat from these UGVs, they are trying to hunt them with FPV drones and artillery. However, despite this, Alter Ego continues to successfully carry out operations with remotely controlled machine guns.
Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated 1,070 Russian servicemen over the past day. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale aggression have exceeded 1,126,000 soldiers. In addition, over the past day, 3 Russian tanks, 43 artillery systems, and 141 units of enemy vehicles and special equipment were destroyed. We'll talk more about this next. We have someone joining us now, Nikolai Malamas, General of the Ukrainian Army, head of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine from 2005 to 2010. He is joining our discussion, our broadcast. We welcome you, and glory to Ukraine.
Thank you. Glory to the heroes.
Nikolai Grigorievich, well, what's your assessment of what we're seeing right now? Let's focus on the hottest spots. On this front, but of course, the topic of Pokrovsk has lately. It hasn't faded into the background, but has become one of the most important topics of discussion and understanding of what's happening on the front right now.
The first thing to note is that the enemy, having no success on the Pokrovsk direction, is changing their tactics for conducting combat operations. This includes reinforcing their troops with trained Marines, airborne assault forces, and new brigades. For example, on the Dobropil direction, there are already 2 line brigades, 1 Marine brigade, tanks, APCs, and, accordingly, the attacks are no longer in the unconventional style. Not with small assault groups on ATVs and motorcycles, but in the traditional, so to speak, strike format. The goal is to break through the defenses, advance only in the Netopropol direction, to regain the position that was once held before we destroyed it, and to reach Kostyantynivka, and then to move further toward Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, thereby encircling from the other side and, accordingly, developing offensive operations. It was not Gerasimov's position, but Putin's. Capture Pokrovsk urgently, seize Dobropilya and Kostyantynivka, and to have the prospect of fully conquering the Donetsk region by winter. That's why the attacks being carried out now are aimed at creating a strike force and breaking through the defenses. But we already had all the operational data there. Of course, we prepared for this situation, launched counterattacks, and defeated them. In fact, these 3 brigades were half destroyed, or most of them were wounded. There was a very powerful strike on their armored vehicles. This meant the destruction of almost all of them. APCs, IFEs, and, of course, tanks. It was a very successful and demonstrative strike because the Russians had already claimed that they had captured the Dobropilya salient and were already moving further toward Kostyantynivka. This is how, at this moment, we are showing how we clearly disrupted their plans. Moreover, just yesterday, even Commander Sersky, he pointed out that, on the contrary, we actually advanced in the Pokrovsk area by about 1,500 to 1,800 meters and expanded our control zone. Moreover, we carried out clearing operations over 1,800 square kilometers. This is yet another successful operation of a non-traditional type. So, on one hand, we are destroying enemy offensive operations at the front, and on the other hand, we are carrying out strikes in various sectors where the enemy does not expect it, mainly on the flanks and in the rear. We are holding 3 positions in the Dubrovsk direction, surrounded by the enemy. So, there are certain successes that could, in the future, have broader implications for the development of large-scale offensive operations. But in any case, the enemy is building up resources there and trying to neutralize our counterattacks. And of course, just yesterday, there was a strengthening of enemy positions in this direction and an attempt at counterattacks. But we are already prepared for such actions. There is intense, difficult, and heavy fighting going on. We are also keeping an eye on the Alexandrovsk direction. This is a more difficult sector. On one hand, the enemy is trying to create, as we say, a southern flank for attacks on the Pokrovsk agglomeration. But the main focus right now is aimed at the Dnipropetrovsk region. We even see reports from Deep State that there is some advance in this sector, about 3 settlements. Yes, they are moving in. We are pushing them out there. But there is some progress to a certain extent. Once again, we're starting to carry out clearing operations in all directions, especially at the junction of the Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, and Zaporizhia regions. There are also intense battles going on. Unconventional actions will be required from our side there, possibly cutting off this strike group and attacking from the rear. This is a very important approach. We are already using it in the Dnipropetrovsk direction, and it has been successful. It's very telling. I think some unconventional actions will show that we're not just holding back the enemy, but acting very effectively and in unexpected ways. And we strike the enemy at those points where they really don't expect it, or where they've broken through into some sector, but we cut them off and hit them right there. Whether it's from the flanks or from the rear, this allows us either to destroy the enemy or to encircle them in that direction. It's still difficult to be there. We can't say that we're fully established there yet. We don't have complete control of the situation, but we still managed to hold back the enemy, didn't let them advance. And, accordingly, we're pushing them out of the Dnipropetrovsk sector, where they had partially entered at the initial stage.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.